Hello and good evening. I'm Dr. Ron Kennedy Bailey, Chairman of the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences here at the LSU School of Medicine in New Orleans, and I also serve in the role of Assistant Dean for Community Engagement here in this role. Thanks so much for joining. We're now in year 3 of our Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated Surgeons General Initiative, started initially by General President Willis Longer Jr. and continued as we move forward with General President Metellus. Today, I'm very excited to also acknowledge that we give substantial, I think, credit and acknowledgement, I think, to our Surgeon General, Brother Jeffrey Sterling out of Fort Worth, Texas, who conceptualized this idea. Really has worked, I think, most deliberately to really pull it together, organize the deputy surgeon generals of myself. I'm deputy in the area of mental health. We have deputy surgeon generals in obesity, diabetes, and cancer, oncologic disease, other issues regarding cardiovascular illness, heart attack and stroke, and international affairs and dentistry. The concept of SGI is one I certainly have really resonates with me. It started off with this idea of healthcare for brothers, by brothers, about brothers. And although I think that many of the themes we address extend outside the particular issue, I think, of African American members of Alpha Phi Alpha, but for all persons in our community, in many regards, for men, young men, particularly in general, these are themes I think of great relevance. Today, I'm excited to have a good friend of mine, an outstanding mental health professional, good brother Brian Turner, PhD psychologist, who actually is the chair of psychology here at Xavier University in New Orleans. I've said to this group before, we're on about once a month. I'm new to New Orleans, but not new to high quality African American males in the field of mental health. So I often will start off these conversations by saying that throughout my career, Brian, persons have often said to me, well, why won't black men go to a psychologist or psychiatrist and do mental health issues? My argument has often been in my 30-year career, I can't get black men to stop coming to me, calling me, and talk about the issues that I think are relevant to them. I would have been if those have been some of the similar issues you've had in your career. Dr. Brian Turner.
All right, man. Brother Bailey, it is good to be here with you, man. And definitely respect and honor and appreciation to Brother General President Lonzer and Brother General President-elect Metellus and my Surgeon General, Brother Sterling. So I think what you just hit on probably continues to be why it is so baffling to me why more brothers don't seek out this profession, this career in the long term. When we think about it, the fact that when we as men come together to talk, we have the opportunity to do this work and help and assist brothers as we think about just the ethos of black men in America and then the historical diasporic experience. So, brother, you're right, man. And when we get together, oftentimes we find so many things to talk about and the fellowship and the healing that comes from conversation and convening together, man. So I look forward to the night. Let's get this topic rolling, man. Let's drop some jewels on, brothers. Let's keep it real so that brothers can leave here and have some real things to do, man. So, yeah, I'm ready.
Well, very well. So I'll start off with what I call more of an official introduction. I couldn't wait to get you on to kind of answer that first question. But with high quality work like you've done, you deserve this official introduction. So Brian Turner, PhD psychologist, is the department head and associate professor of psychology at the Xavier University here in Louisiana, in New Orleans. He's a licensed clinical psychologist, works with Moments of Truth, the LOC, also the policy director of New Orleans Youth Alliance. He has access on Facebook and Instagram and email and other ways to communicate with him that will allow him to share. A bit about his background. Dr. Turner is a high school graduate from Isidore Newman High School here in New Orleans. He got a bachelor's degree in psychology at Southern University in Baton Rouge. And a clinical psychology PhD at Jackson State University in Jackson, Mississippi. Clinically, Dr. Turner has worked with a diversity of issues, clients, and settings. Most ardently, he's worked with Black males from adolescence to adulthood on a wide spectrum of issues. And that's exactly why we have you on here tonight. Academically, Dr. Turner has published work in peer-reviewed journals, book chapters, and technical reports on community health, masculinity, identity development, and mentorship. He's a proficient in topics ranging from reduction of mental health stigma, masculinity, therapy and culture, and mental health in higher education. Dr. Brian Turner's work as a professor, clinician, and researcher is grounded in multicultural training, which examines the impact of culture on mental health in general, as well as I think in our community. During his time at Xavier University, his research focused on Black male experiences in higher education, Black women and risky behaviors, and mental health at HBCUs, historically Black college universities. Dr. Turner's work with the New Orleans Youth Alliance pulls together work as a professor, clinician, and community member as he works to prepare future leaders in New Orleans to serve our city and our world actively and well-informed. More, though, I really also appreciate much of your community involvement. I want to share that with our audience tonight as well. Brian is really currently serves on the board of Metropolitan Human Services District, City Park Improvement Association, and the Arts Council of New Orleans. He serves as the co-chair of the Association of Black Psychologists Ethics Committee. He also serves as a mentor for the Civil Back Society, which you'll talk about tonight. He's a member, by definition, on the program tonight of our wonderful fraternity, Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated, and the graduate chapter in New Orleans is the Sigma Lambda chapter, where he serves previously the chapter historian, and currently he's the vice president-elect of our graduate chapter. Dr. Turner was named by Sigma Lambda 2023 the Charles Teamer Alpha Man of the Year, of which we're very proud of you. He, in addition, has been honored by the 2020-24 Xavier University of Louisiana Faculty of Excellence Award and Service. He's an alumnus of Urban League Equity and Diversity, a so-called ULEAD Fellowship, and Justice Revis ORT Leadership Institute, as well as the New Orleans Regional Leadership Institute and the Leaders of Color Leadership Institute. Most importantly, he's the proud father of an intelligent, beautiful little girl, Blair, who we saw a little bit earlier. Hope she'll pop out again tonight so everybody can say hi to Blair and Layla. And he's also the daddy to Von Duke Bailey Turner, a full-blooded German Rottweiler. All being said, people often will say I don't get the long introduction. I like the long introduction because I want our audience to know really who you are. And people are more than just their degrees, in which you have outstanding degrees. They are where they work. They are their family who they engage with. They are their organizations where they put their time, where they volunteer with nonprofits. They are very often, I think, who they've been received awards by. That often shows where a lot of your commitment is in our community. All issues that I think are important in general. And I'd say tonight, my friend, they're very important for African-American men in the field of mental health. Your thoughts?
Yes. Yes, sir. Well, you know, Brother Bailey, my mentor, Dr. Joseph White, used to say, the reality of what we do is really to help people. The idea of being a psychologist and doing some of the work we do. And once again, I look forward to introducing you again, as you did serve with us in the regional convention here for the Southwestern Regional up in March. The reality of it is that we are men and we have a very varied life. We do a lot of different things. And it is great to know that I can be honored by a man like you as a brother, but also as a professional, but also just that I can serve my community. A part of my joke in life was that I didn't know if I would ever be able to return back to New Orleans and do the work that I had ventured out to do. So I found it an honor, and it's very humbling just to be back in New Orleans, to be doing the work that we do as we continue to grow our relationship professionally, as well as personally, but also to know that we are impacting our city, New Orleans, a long way. And you said earlier that you are new to New Orleans, brother. You're no longer new to New Orleans. You didn't have my cooking. You didn't have my crawfish. You about to eat some fried turkey. You're no longer new to New Orleans, brother. You in here.
Well, I appreciate it, and you're right. And the fried crawfish with the potatoes and corn was good. I'm looking forward to the turkey on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. But it's actually a very good point, because I think in my experience, I think these artists have heard my story before. I'm from Texas. Happy to be here in New Orleans. I'm not new. I've been here 3 years now. But I've worked in communities similar to where I am right now. I grew up in a community similar to this in outside of Houston, Texas. I was in Nashville at Meharry for about 7 years. I was outside of Greensboro, North Carolina, at Wake Forest for about 4 years. And often we find ourselves engaged in many similar activities in community. My experience has been that for a Black mental health professional, that's essential to being viewed seriously and taken, I think, not only seriously, but also with some degree of integrity in your community. Very difficult, I think, to be in our profession, a profession of people and by people, where we have to understand people and hear them and not understand their lives, eat that food, attend those social functions, go to town halls of city policemen are talking about everything from gun violence to, transportation, access, safety in the community. Those issues to me are the bedrock that really makes, I think, the foundation of a quality opportunity for an African American mental health professional to work well in these settings. And that all that's saying is one perspective of it. When you then move to schools, and what we do, I think, touching young Black males in schools, it goes a long way towards saying once one does that, we have a fighting chance to be taken seriously and then to be able to do some good in our community.
Yeah, definitely. It hinges upon understanding that our mental health is really a cornerstone of our overall wellness. Much to the surprise of many, we are not simple beasts of burden, right? We're not simply a function of our ability to physically make it through this world. And so when we are well mentally and we are well physically, we are much more capable and able to do the things that we need to do as people. And so I think the reality, as you said, and kind of when I think of my travels from Jackson, Mississippi to Akron, Ohio, Pensacola, Florida, and now back home in New Orleans, one of the things I found was that our communities tend to pull on us because we actually have tended to be able to show that we can physically sustain some of the stressors that happen, right? We all know what it feels like to be a Black man, to get those red and blue lights behind us. But it's something different when we can help brothers understand what that both physiologically and psychologically feels like, right? We're able to talk about our experiences when we have been both at the top of our game, but also at the bottom. We talk about sports a good deal when we get together, but it's interesting that sometimes we have to be honest about that compelling spirit and feeling that sits within us that says we want to strive for excellence. But sometimes we do, as the young folks like to say, we got to get it out the mud. And that's not always a good feeling. It's not always nice to know that we're without. It's easy when you have, it's easy when you are with, but sometimes they have to make it happen. And one of the realities that we live with, once again, is how do we provide for the next generation? How do we make sure that our experiences and what we've done and had to go through doesn't necessarily become, so foreign to them? I'm getting to that point now when I stop at the store, the brothers say, "Hey, what's up, Unc?" And that's that realization for us older Black men sometimes that Unc, I'm like, wait, hold on. I'm not that old yet, but I realize some of them gray hairs are poking through a little more than they used to. But it's also to take time with brothers and talk to them and let them know that the suit and the bow tie does not mean I'm that far removed from the experience.
It's a very important point. I too share in the construct of being surprised when somebody says, calls me sir, or unc, or I can help you, or Ike. I know we're some anecdotes here, but I go work out with my son in the morning early, like 5 a.m. We go to this place to work out, and one day I guess I was taking too long to get up from having to get down on the ground, and I was doing some calisthenics there, what have you. And this young guy walks up to me, actually, I helped getting up over there. I thought I was just moving kind of slow. And I didn't know I'd make it a sign that it looked like I couldn't actually stand up at all. That was kind of eye-opening. Tangible points. I think that the reality is being believable earns credibility in many places. I think is essential in our community. I think very often my experience has been that young men can smell a fake and a phony very quickly, and are a lot more likely to ignore that person if the person is what I like to call culturally competent to their concerns and their needs. I'm the first to say, as an African American mental health professional like yourself, that one doesn't have to be African American to talk to and listen to and be heard by young Black men. But you do have to be culturally competent, which means they have to recognize that you are willing to do the work that it takes to hear them at their level of communication, what matters to them, and to prioritize, I think, their interests and considerations. If you don't do so, I think it really creates a remarkable barrier early on to be able to do any good, effective work. And one of my early examples has been, in residency, I, like you, maybe oftentimes in your career, there are not many African Americans in the work you're involved in. That's sort of been my experience in some places. I've been in some places where there were many African Americans. I was chairman of Meharry for 7 years. But I've been in other places where there weren't many. I was chairman of Wake Forest, and I was the only African American male in my department. But early in my career, when I was in residency training, the first 2 years, I think I was the only African American at the University of Texas. My last 2 years, a guy came from Chicago. There were two of us African American males in the group. So one thing that happened was very often many of the referrals that came of Black males came to, I guess, me or maybe later on him. But it also seemed to imply that we had a lot in common. And I think that even as young Black males, we have to recognize that we don't always have everything in common, even with other young African American men, unless we try to do the work that it takes to hear them and understand them. Although we may have come from different backgrounds, different educational levels, different family circumstances, single parent households, what have you. There's a lot, I think, that goes into really being heard by and meeting a young man's level of emotional need than only being a Black male. So there's a plus involved, but we still got work to do to be relevant, I think, in our community doing mental health work. That's in my experience. What's been yours?
Oh, brother, I would definitely mirror that, and I would just concur. I would definitely say I think one of the other experiences is that since I did begin this career in my more youthful appearances, right, I had hair mainly. What I think about most was folks would look at my degrees, but they would look at my face and they would wonder if I had an effect by the time period that they were trying to ascertain by my appearance, if I had an effect actually completed all of the dutiful tasks necessary to be called doctor. And I must say, in the moment of candor, I found that too often it might have been young brothers and sisters because of what we know to be the stereotype, right? It's the misanthropic understanding that for some reason, even amongst our own people, that we have to check ourselves and make sure that we've gotten the degree, that we've done the work, versus when I know some of our contemporaries who are white, they may be given a pass in those moments. And so it was very easy at times to kind of allow one's fears that, yes, I do have the degree. Yes, I am licensed. And yes, I've been doing this for a little bit longer than you may think. But it also became more apparent through the actual work. And that's, I think, been the joy, is to be able to completely disarm an individual when I'm able to live up to the expectations of the career. And so similarly, I do remember, which was honestly a bit of a shock to me, but when I was working at another institution, I had become the Black therapy guy. So anybody Black, they should see me. Had a young man who was referred to me, and it was just said to me, because I was Black, he should see me. And through working with him, I realized that his issues would not be resolved within the therapy relationship with me, because I too much reminded him of his father, who was a minister, Black and bald. So here he's sitting across from me, and I normally was wearing a suit. I reminded him too much of his father. And so I was able to refer him to a colleague. When I did so, he felt much more comfortable being able to reveal the source of his dysfunction and his distress to my colleague, who's a white woman. I saw that young man later at some point, and he kind of wanted to apologize to me. He said, "Well, Dr. Turner, I didn't want to hurt your feelings, but I just didn't feel comfortable." And I explained to him that the greatest thing I felt I was able to do was refer him to someone he could work with, because my care was not in me getting any glory or any type of award from working with him. It was that he would get the resolution he needed. So both if and but and or in that, we are here to not just serve our people, but to make sure that they get the service they need. Whether it's with me or not is not the issue. I want us to be healthy, because apparently, and I don't know if we're gonna play with this, but I had to do a little pep talk to my little mama. We might have a little bumpy ride the next 4 years, and we're gonna all need some therapy if this go the way it might go.
Well, we hadn't actually had that to the agenda just yet, but I think we're going to probably have to, because what happened in the election on Tuesday, it means a whole lot to many people. I've got, like most of us, a cell phone and emails that have just been blowing up with all kind of considerations about what that means to different people. I mentioned 3 or 4. You'll be able to talk about it now, we'll talk about it a little bit later. But one issue has just been that there's been a surprise by many, the sheer number of AA men who voted differently. I'm the first to admit that people have the right to vote for what they want to vote for. And in many genders and races, it was not 100 to 0. There were differing numbers. There's a lot of discussion in the media. I think for white women, it was, 75-25 red, where they showed on television. For white men, it was 75-25. For white women, it was 70-30 red. I think for black men, it was 20 red, 80 blue. And for black women, it was like 8% red, 92% blue. And Hispanic, I think, was about 55-45 or 60-40. So you did see some differences based on race and gender. Been a lot of discussion about that. There's also just the issue that this is a unique scenario because we got a person who ran and won, who was president before. Often you win and you do it back to back, so it's 8 years. I don't think in 100 years have you had somebody win 4 years, lose out 4 years, and come back 4 years. That does create a very different dynamic, opportunity for how that person wants to do things, what people are expecting to happen, what kind of the expectations for them are. I think a third issue that my followers bring up about a lot. I mentioned I actually have this title of Assistant Dean of Community Engagement. Some places call it diversity, but the reality is, in some places, a lot of that's been under fire. Diversity and DEI programs, and people talk about whether somebody's woke or not, and a lot of the gains that have been made in historically underrepresented groups in higher education and government contracting and access, I think, to care, be it health care or other kind of professional services. So the reality is many people are concerned. So who wins that election does matters a lot. I think it matters worldwide. I got a son in the military. War issues come into play where there's more or less risk of war in different places as well. So you're 100% right. These considerations of politics and that can change policy absolutely can have a substantial impact on young black men, like on all Americans. And so it can cause anxiety and stress in some, real or perceived, that people like you and I have to then try to deal with and try to help them with.
I think there's a level of comfort at times when we're able to insulate ourselves in our communities, and then sometimes it is the locales we work at. Being at LSU in a city like New Orleans gives us some comfort, and then being at Xavier, that we have a history of doing really good work, that we have a certain pedigree and a legacy to try to put aside some of the political speak, so that we can do the work that communities need. But I do think it does heighten, especially on the topic for tonight, the fact that we want to make sure that people are aware of the various factors that can impact their mental health and their wellness, because all too often it's the things that we ignore, it's the things that we may not be attending to that unfortunately may be coming back later on to hurt us. So we want brothers to have their eyes wide open. We want brothers to be introspective as well as prospective and understanding the things and the factors that are going on in and around them, and also as well to the people that they take care of and the people that take care of them. We're at a point, especially if we just think about our communities, we do not know if and when the threat may come. And so I want brothers to be prepared and be ready. And the best way to do that is to take time now to be preparing ourselves to understand if we have any triggers, if we have any experiences, if we know anybody, right? Once again, I know it might be a little older for some folks, but when I think about some of the experiences, what we call sundown towns, growing up in Louisiana, and I know in Texas, there were places where we understood and knew that could be a threat to us after a certain time of the day. I don't want to enliven anyone to create such, but I will heighten brothers' experience and understanding that we want to be aware where there might be a threat, because it's the threats that we don't think about and that we don't see that hurt us most.
Make a tremendous point. I think the reality is not only do threats put all individuals at a risk of stress and anxiety, I think that many would argue that they're probably worse for males, young black males, because of our history. It's, I think, easier, many would argue, all too often if you're in a setting with an AA mental health professional, psychiatrist, psychologist, social worker, nurse, case manager, for those issues to resonate with them, because all too often many of us have had similar unfortunate, untoward experiences. You mentioned yourself the issue of having a life come up behind you. I often would tell the story because I think it's helpful for my experience. One of the areas helpful is when I'm with young black men, I like to share stories about myself and my personal experience, my life, with things that have not gone well. Because I think we also risk the likelihood of missing, I think, the cultural connection, if you're trying to, the cultural competence connection, if there's a missed opportunity to imply that everything about our lives, if we have some success, because we have MDs and PhDs, that it's all going well. And there's been a lot of bumps along the way. But one story that I give is that it keeps that I'm born and raised in Beaumont, Texas. I'm sure started driving at 15, like most people. You get a beginner's license, or you can ride with somebody. Then you get a full license at age 16. So that's fully, 30 years ago for me, so to speak, 40 years ago practically. And so you're driving from age 16 until I was age 50, 34 years. I got stopped by the police 5 times in 35 years. Maybe get a speeding ticket, maybe get a da-da-da, if you will. In the 4 years, Dr. Turner, that I worked in North Carolina, and I lived in a place called Winston-Salem, I got stopped 4 times in 4 years. Hard to believe that doesn't speak volumes to the differences of how some locations engage on some of these interpersonal actions, like the police decided to make a stop with young black men. Now, in none of those 4 times that I was in North Carolina, I'll finish the story, did I get a ticket. None of those times did I get arrested or sanctioned anyway. Just got stopped, had to go through the little dog and pony show of touching my nose and engaging in a neurological test you engage in to show that you're competent to drive and not impaired. I got back in my car and I was actually on my way. But again, 35 years more or less, 5 stops, 4 years in North Carolina, 4 stops. That is, to me, one of the most signature examples of how I myself, although I had a minor experience just getting stopped, never getting arrested or in jailed or having to get on the ground on my chest or have my hands behind me with handcuffs, none of that kind of stuff. But just this acknowledgement that how people view you is different. And when that happens, I think that's what leads very often to some of the chronic undermining of self-esteem of young black males, which at some point can have them come see people like us because they have depression and anxiety.
Yeah, man, and look, that right there is probably the kind of initial space by which young black men, I think, begin to feel that level of distress that kind of just can hearken upon us like just a lived experience, right? That there's something, it's not tangible, but it's palpable, right? I feel it, that somehow, some way, I need to be aware of how these things can affect me, because once again, as you stated, it's a misnomer to think that somehow, some way, I'm just a bad person. And unfortunately, sometimes young brothers begin to just embody that. And I think that is and does oftentimes become a precursor or a predisposer to some young brothers just deciding, well, why even try to do well? And I will definitely say one of my joys, and I love my city for what it's worth. Growing up in New Orleans is always fun, but having Mardi Gras and some other experiences where we tended to be able to deal with some of these things outright. I did not have that experience. And even as I got older, I realized I felt more I felt more of a potential to be harmed when I did live in Mississippi, when I did live in Ohio, when I did live in Florida. And I realized that I just didn't know the culture in those places. I didn't know what was okay. And just quickly, you reminded me of an incident. I was over and living in Pensacola, and it was probably a late evening, and me and a friend of mine, we were trying to go home or decide where we were going, and we had pulled over in the parking lot, and I opened my truck door, and my radio was playing, and a police officer on a bike began to yell at me to close my door. My music was too loud. And so I said, I had no problem. I said, but just, sir, there's nothing playing. It's a factory system. I didn't have any speakers. I didn't have any. He says, I don't care. Okay, no problem, man. So just, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't trying to stand out in this parking lot. And my friend who was from there said, yeah, man, they just be tripping on us. And I laughed because I thought about me and this guy are professionals. And we just pulled over in the parking lot to talk about where we would go next after eating and hanging out or whatever. And the police officer just had to scream and yell. He had nothing else to do, apparently. But that was his point, was to scream and yell at the black guy who had opened his truck door. So yeah, man, I think we put in perspective in a lot of ways the fact that we as black men, while we are not without, at the end of the day, we have a number of factors that can impact us, and we need to be aware. We need to help and support each other. We need to make sure we know where resources are. I look forward to. I've been able to have some conversations within the house, and I hope that we're able to make something happen where we can tap into brothers like yourself and I, some of the younger brothers we know, some of the older brothers who paved the way. I actually think a lot about a brother who, Dr. Naeem Akbar over in Florida, who has written a number of books on Black men and Black male mental health and just our community. And I think a lot about folks who've paved the way and the fact that we have to continue to pave the way in this profession, but also just in general, that we help brothers take care of themselves. So I look forward to that one day. I think we should be able to do this, put together something that brothers will have a directory or a resource within the house that if they have a need that they can call on someone and know that that brother is well trained, well credentialed, and also well meaning.
Well, that really speaks, I think, volumes to some of the questions I kind of wanted to get through tonight, and I think you really begin to address, I think, with granularity, much, I think, part of the value of being persons who have been able to kind of get on this side of the aisle once you've kind of gone through these challenges and jumped over these hurdles and worked through all of the pitfalls that exist, and you have a MD, a PhD, whatever level of success one is trying to obtain. What can we do to kind of do our profession, do it well? You have to be competent and satisfactory in your regular work, but also try to give back to your community. So it was actually one of these initial questions, this idea that in this time of the year, in the holiday season, because our theme for tonight is really addressing mental health in the holiday season, what are some considerations you have as an African-American professional psychologist in addressing Black men who deal with seasonal affective disorder? Is it different than others? Are there some challenges that I think that are more complex? Are there varying ways that African American men with seasonal affective disorder present or how they respond? Love to hear your thoughts about it, because the reality is it's a huge issue for us. In many parts of the country and the world, when it gets colder, it gets darker, the days get shorter. That does have an impact on our mental health. And we live in a society where in too many places, young Black men are already under so many of the adverse social determinants of health that make things much more difficult. They have much less cushion to get by. Less access to food and resources, less access to education and jobs, less access to safety and housing. So any other changes, I'd imagine, might be disproportionately adverse to the young Black male in many places, including here in New Orleans.
Yeah, well, brother, I think one of the things that this immediately touches on for me is the fact that there's a two-part to this, right? There is the lived experience component, just like this is a time of year that things are shifting. We're moving to the end of the year. Oftentimes, this is where things begin to conclude and wrap up, right? This is where we begin to see brothers kind of having a transition to the next phase of whatever task they might be working on. But then also there's the nostalgia, there's the psychological component where now is also where we move into this holiday season and we now have to deal with the potential remembrances of loved ones who've gone on, who've transitioned. And so when we think about it, and then I will somewhat be a little funny. This is also with some of our football teams. We begin to realize that they're not going to make the playoffs, right? But the reality being that this is where a lot of things begin to happen. So when we look at the seasons, right, the reality is that we begin to see that we have to make changes going into the new year. With Thanksgiving, with Christmas and New Year, these are the times where families historically have their greatest interactions. This is where the greatest number of family members also tend to interact. So if we look at it as Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's, we see that have we made the changes? Like you said, some of those pressure moments, right? It's time where we're supposed to be preparing for these feasts. We're supposed to be preparing gifts. We're supposed to be preparing celebrations. Well, if I've been working all year and if I've been trying to make it happen, if I find out at the end of the year I'm a little short in the bank account, and then I'm also maybe mourning the loss of a loved one, a father, or a mother, or a grandparent, or a partner, right, a loved one. This is the time where all that seemingly comes crashing down upon us. And I think what we need to tend to think about at this point in time is how do we normalize the fact that this should also be a time of like recognition of those things, that we shouldn't be glossing over and forcing people to engage in practices that might actually be a little bit harmful to them, right? We should take time to actually allow our brothers and our family, our sisters as well, to give a little reverence to the fact that this might be a little bit tougher time at this year than for some others, right? And that's why I said I like to always try to be a little bit lighthearted in this, right? That when we look at it, Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, that's what we're trying to celebrate our favorite teams and things like that. Well, everybody's not able to celebrate, man. Everybody's not looking at this as a time of celebration. And so what I think about for brothers is being able to check in. You know, one of the beauties of being in the brotherhood is that we should be able to call each other and just check on each other, make sure, are you good? Are you feeling okay? Do you need anything? We need to make sure we're tapping in and touching brothers who making sure that if things are changing for them, that they know that they have somewhere to go. You know, honestly, in a moment of transparency, when my oldest brother passed away in 2015, he and I began frying turkeys when I was in high school, which was in the 90s. And for the most part, it was usually just him and I. We'd get out in the driveway, we'd fry a turkey or two, we'd have a couple of drinks, smoke. He smoked cigars, he smoked cigarettes, I smoked cigars. And that would be it. And then slowly we started to include some other brothers. And like I shared with you, we fried up to 20 turkeys a year or two ago. We fried, I think, 17 last year. And really the reality of it was just an opportunity for brothers to get together in recognition that some brothers don't have the family or the time. I don't even ask. I don't ask anybody. I don't have a lot of money, but I just say, look, I'm going to buy everything. You just got to bring your turkey. If you want me to season, I'll do that for you. I don't ask any questions because I've had brothers open their homes to do the same for me. So in that spirit, what I think about it, this is a time where we need to be honest. Everybody's not going to come and tell you that the world is falling apart. Sometimes brothers just need to know that you got a place for them to come and sit and be a brother. You on mute, brother. Brother Bailey, you on mute. Yeah.
Yeah. So not only am I on a personal note planning on being there the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving myself this month, so I'll bring my turkey. I mean, watch how you season it, because I think that you can learn a lot from a man how he seasons his meat. So yeah, I learned from my father. You got to kind of watch that. We spent a lot of time at a barbecue pit when I was growing up, Gerard's Barbecue in Texas. So I know a little bit about eating links, but watching everybody else season, and there's a lot of value to that. And I've enjoyed his New Orleans food, as you mentioned earlier. But you make a remarkably tangible point, and one that I think as I get older, I'm making more and more. And I've got some positive feedback from it, so I want to make it tonight. So thank you for leading me into this. But this idea of is our brothers good? I want to talk to you about that. Yeah, you said it, and increasingly in frat meeting, we talk about this, that, you know, either if you're a black male, nobody asks you anything, which is worse. Or if they ask you, the normal refrain is, I'm good. I think as black mental health professionals, we've got to remember and know and realize that I'm good doesn't always mean you ought to end the conversation. I think it means you might want to keep the conversation going. And I'm not saying you got to just badger somebody with 100, tell them what's really going on. But June, if you can get 3 of those out, is one issue. My experience has been you may not get I'm good 3 times. By that second or third iteration, a guy might tell you what they really want you to hear. It could be as simple as when you're having a brotherhood after frat meeting, which is a social event for guys. Guys go and, I've been in different chapters. I'm from Texas. I'm here now. I used to be in North Carolina. Most places have a brotherhood afterwards where you relax, and maybe that may be some enjoying beverages. You're right. And somebody will say, I'm good, when 2 other guys are standing around. Then 2 guys kind of walk away. That guy lingers. And then they say, I want to tell you something. Or what about XYZ or the like? So talk about that a little bit, because I think that's some value for us to share with our audience. And we have, a live audience and a taped audience. It's not just what happens when it's easy to access young guys or middle-aged guys who have some trouble, but when it's hard to get them to access them, I think it remains our responsibility as black professionals to find a way to help somebody. You can only do that if you get them to engage.
Yeah. Once again, I think that's one of those things where when I've had some people question the utility of psychology, I talk about it as this is both a skill and a science. I don't really talk about psychology as an art. I remove the refrain that this is flu or froofy. I talk about a skill set. the amount of time that you and I and other professors have spent in training and in pedagogy and in conference, and the amount of CEUs that we have to maintain our professional licensures. This is a skill, baby. We take time to ensure that we are able to provide the services that we do. And we take what happens in the book and in the lab and in the research project, and we bring it to the people. And so I think that's one of the insightful things that I really appreciate, having had the time and ability, and in so many ways to be able to sit with brothers in here. And I think about oftentimes, Brother Bailey, I may not even wait. I'll text her and say, "Hey, look, man, how long you get a chance, bro?" And they'll be like, "What's up?" Just call me, man. And I said, "Look, man, let's get a bite to eat." And I said, "Look, man, I know you was going through such and such with whatever. Tell me what's happening with that." And I'll get that, "Man, you remember that?" Like, "Yeah, I remember that, bro." I can tell you, I saw it in your face. I can understand that maybe you just wasn't ready to talk, man. But run it to me. Let's see what we can do. And so I think what we're actually getting into is that thing, man, that as men so often, unfortunately, we may shy away from. But as men, it is okay to show love to my brother. It is okay, and it is a sign of a true brother to show that openness, to let a brother let you know where he may need some help, because everybody's not gonna ask. But I guarantee you, if you show yourself as a brother, then the brother's gonna be able to tell you what they need. And I can say that both within the frat, within the house, and outside the house, because everybody that's helped me has not looked like me, and everybody I've helped didn't look like me. So I can even say a couple of weeks ago, I stopped to help a sister on the side of the road, and what she told me at the end of it, she simply said to me, "I can't believe nobody was willing to stop until you came along." And I said, "Well, I think that's the point. It was on me to stop. It was on me to come along." And my reality, brother, that's why I want to once again invite the brothers in the brotherhood to be willing to stop, be willing to put themselves in a position to say, "Look, bro, it might not be tonight, might not be tomorrow, but if you need somebody to talk to, if you need some support, holler at me." And then the key to that is this: you may not have the resource to help that brother, but if you reach out, I promise you'll find what that brother might need, and you might be able to be the connection. You might be the conduit which that brother gets their need met. And I think that's the beauty of, once again, just tapping in as a real brother, as a real man, and saying, "Look, I'm here." But once again, I am my brother's keeper. I have to accept that. And so that's why I think sometimes, man, yes, during frat meetings, sometimes we got to be honest about who in the house can help. Yeah, everything ever since I come along, we say everything we need is in the house. Sometimes we just gotta ask.
And being willing to ask means a lot. Oftentimes for guys, it's hard to ask. This fear of feeling vulnerable internally, and looking what some might think is less than optimal, if not even weak, to use that term, externally, are huge barriers to seeking care in our community. I regularly say to people, and I want our audience to hear me say today, as a 30-year psychiatrist or whatever now, I think that individuals end up seeking help. They just unfortunately do it externally. You go and do something that drives the world to make you receive some resources. If you commit an action that's aggressive or violent, somebody's going to fight you, or the police are going to come. If you go to a job and you yell at your boss and you have a bad moment, you blow up, you might lose your job or get sanctioned or sent home. There's a lot of energy around these kind of things. If you have a conflict in a relationship, whether it's in private or in public, whether that is a short-term or long-term one, that also engineers, I think, certain degree, of conflict and difficulty, and it puts you on the map. People know who you are and what's going on. When young men do these things, it does drive them to an element of receiving some resources and help or support. It just may often be negative. You may get support. I've done a lot of care in jails and prisons. You can get psychiatric care, but it's unfortunate if you, in that setting, you do it after you've engaged in an action that society views as illegal, and then you have to be sanctioned and punished in that way. And that doesn't always just kind of go away. Or again, if you lose something, your job, your relationship, if you have a car wreck because you drove too fast because you're mad at somebody and you're affecting your health, you're in a hospital getting help or support, but very often it comes after the fact, and after you have to receive some other kind of institutional engagement before you receive that help or support that people like us offer. So what we tend to offer in mental health is upfront, is proactive, is forward thinking, is progressive, very often is preventative in its approach. And it's unfortunate society all too often in our community links that to these negative terms like being weak or unable. The other point I was going to mention before I get to the second question, we have 45 minutes, we have 2 questions. So this group tonight, I think that Black Psychs, we got a lot to say. But this issue, I think, of also church and religion is hard to miss. That's not the whole discussion for tonight, but I'll at least give you a chance to think about that piece and address it as well, because I keep hoping we'll get into a better place in my career where there's a better, reasonable blend between church and religion and spirituality and organized official healthcare in the mental health sphere. And that it doesn't have to be that, in order to be good with God, you have to be bad with psychology if you were going forward. So I also want to make that point, because that was a huge issue I was going in Beaumont, Texas. A person didn't want to be seen going to a psychiatrist because of the ridicule that they would receive by friends and colleagues elsewhere. That needs to go away. That speaks to this issue of stigma, which can adversely affect the Black community.
Well, man, I can be very direct. I will shout out my church home here in New Orleans, Abundant Life Tabernacle, a couple other households of worship that I attend or that I've been invited to. The City of Love, Bishop Lester, or my home pastor, my Bishop Tyrone G. Jefferson, also Pastor Barry over at Household of Faith. I've had the pleasure of those men inviting me into their church homes on Sundays, right? We know in a Black church, most pastors ain't giving up the pulpit, right? So those men have invited me in on their Sunday services and given me the opportunity to go forth and talk about the connection between our mental health and our spirituality and faith. And so I think what actually happens, and this is what I think you're speaking to, I have given myself over to being able to look for those conversations. I've also seen other churches here in New Orleans who have invited mental health folks in. I've seen the growth and the need to do health fairs in our churches. I also think a big part of it, to your point, brothers, if we're honest, I like to tell people I'm not a firefighter. I don't really enjoy dealing with crises, right? I don't want to get that phone call that I have to go running into a burning building, so to speak. And so for me, I think that is a beautiful relationship that we work to foster. And once again, I would love to see and make sure, I think, as we do this work, that the fraternity, that we begin to actually have that conversation across our fraternity, but across the Divine Nine, but putting ourselves in positions to actually foster some of these things happening. Once again, I even think about on some of our college campuses, right? That I think that's something we could look at is making sure that we, within our house, supports universities, right? Not just in terms of faith, but most universities have counseling centers, right? So what if we begin to look at making sure counseling centers on universities where our college brothers exist and live, making sure that they're providing culturally competent, relevant, and access to resources to help them in these times of need. We know college counseling centers now are experiencing some of the greatest increases in utilization, mainly because that's usually a first line for a young Black man who's going to experience some type of distress. So between the university setting, between the church setting, and between the community, i.e. our Black Greek-led organization, some other type of civic institution or agency, we need to make sure that we can support that. And so I'm with you, man. I think the church is one of the first places and the best place and many opportunities that can speak to, hey, here are some referral sources. And I think the 3 pastors, the 3 gentlemen I spoke of who are faith leaders, they have my number on speed dial. And I appreciate them because they know if they call me and they have a church member who needs me, I'm right on it. And so I appreciate them. And I think, to your point, Brother Bailey, that's something we have to make sure we're fostering. We have to make sure we offer ourselves to those institutions and agencies. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think that's one of the things that I believe we're going to have to foster ourselves. But I also think, and I'm going to come back to what you said in the beginning, we got to make sure we're accessible in the community. It does us no justice, brother. You know, you and I talk about it does us no justice to go get these degrees and credentials and certifications, but not be accessible to the people that we actually went out and did it for. So we got to make sure that we're attending functions, that we're in the community, and we're not inaccessible, right? As it is so often said, and I remember so vividly, right? We must be able to walk with kings, but not lose our the common touch, right?
But absolutely, I think that well, first of all, I love your rendition. You've you walk the walk and talk the talk that you walk by going to churches, developing relationships with pastors and alike. Because you're right, people generally don't want to give Sunday up. So yeah, I hear you loud and clear. You've made an impact in those settings. You've laid a lot of groundwork down, and you're very respected. And I think that's so important in this relationship. These are about interpersonal relationships very often that a psychiatrist and a psychologist and a social worker has to have. I think going to be effective in this community with this, I think, particular patient population. I also think this issue of us not taking no for an answer and hearing what's kind of wrong with someone, this issue about are you good or whatever, really resonates with me. I mean, I'll probably think about that quite a bit as I'm driving home this evening because I'm often doing what we call a psychological autopsy, trying to reconsider my own behavior and think that I do this right, that I do this well. I don't want to have a missed opportunity where maybe I could have made an intervention that would have mattered and would have helped somebody, and I overlook it or miss that option. And I think it can be easy to miss at times, even for us. Make this comment, are we all good? There's comments like that that imply there's really nothing wrongful. And we've got to hear the fact that all too often persons, they don't lead what really the problems are for any number of reasons. The stigma against having mental health problems, us being kind of big and healthy and successful in our own settings of lives. If you're around somebody who's physically unable or inept, they may also struggle because that is also another area that they may view internally with unfairly as a problem or area of weakness that they may have. So we just have to be very, very mindful to have, I think, our eyes and ears open, I think, in this regard. I want to talk a little bit about some healthy ways people can respond during this time of the year to these kind of problems. The reality is there's some unhealthy things we can do. Drink too much, or we should drive too fast, or get in trouble in one way or the other. And of course, that's counterproductive. What are some healthy strategies that you recommend for young Black males during this time of the year to deal with the stresses and anxieties that are inherent in their lives?
And Brother Bailey, I think one of the beautiful things that we get to do is talk about treatment. I love when we really get to talk about how we help people. So with that question, one of the first things I love to offer to brothers specifically at this time of the year, let's talk about ways that, in all honesty, we can honor if there is something going on, that we can honor those loved ones that we're fallen, that we're missing, right? I think all too often we try to tell brothers, just get over it. Just get over it. Just let it go. I tell brothers, let's not do that. Let's actually sit down and honestly have the conversation with ourselves, even, right? If in the introspective moment about what might be going on. And so I will say I've had a client who, when tasked with this question around this time of the year, he had a moment of like just like enlightenment. And he realized that it was this time of the year that he had lost some of the most prized possessions in his life. He had lost a relationship. He lost the ability to have his son near him. He'd lost some family members. And so it took about 3 sessions for us to go through all of the loss that he had. But what we found was when he actually realized the loss, he said, well, I need to celebrate this, man. He said, because all of these things I've been able to get back. And so what we really did was that we were able to recreate the balance, the equilibrium, because all he had remembered was the bad. And so we shifted it to be more about, let's celebrate the good. Let's figure out what we've done good in response to these negatives. So that's really my first thing. The second thing, I get brothers to create some new traditions, right? This is the time where if we take ourselves to task, we should be looking for the joy and some of the good things that we can do. So what are new traditions? So while, like I said earlier, my oldest brother passed away in 2015, I found that I needed to get my other brothers involved because we can sit around a table. And I have a cousin, when he comes over, he brings the type of beer that my brother liked that I have sworn that I will never drink again. But Brother Bailey, what we do is we put that can at the end of the table and leave that seat open. And we created that tradition of just allowing it to be the reverence of the fact that my brother's still with us in spirit. But we invited new brothers. I invited new friends. I invite people to the table so that we can do just what we're talking about, right? Be able to reverence the fact that there's some ways that we can find health and wealth with what we do. And of course, if we're going to be honest, sometimes we got to call on the experts. And Brother Bailey, you was talking about it earlier, and I remember that one of the things I love to tell clients is simple. If you break your leg, who you going to call? A doctor. If you break your arm, who you going to call? A doctor. So when things ain't right in your head, why you don't call a doctor? So sometimes it gets to the point where, let's just be honest, I may need to call experts. So if we get to the point where, talking to mom or grandma or talking to the fellas or some of the things you've used before, maybe it's time to call an expert. And that's what we got to be honest. Let's be honest about what we want folks to do. We want you to check credentials. We want you to check their capacity. We want you to check their abilities, right? And then, of course, some of the smaller things that I like to think about. Sometimes we got to make sure we do the healthy thing. We can't eat as much as we used to. See, sometimes that heavy eating, all it does is put us in that tryptophan coma, and we can't get up. We don't want to go nowhere, right? We should not be drinking as much, right? As we get older, we know it's harder to lose weight, but some of those calories we put on is because of alcohol or drinks. Sometimes you got to say, I need to set me a little bit of a limit, right? And then lastly, we got to do some things, and this is a different what I said earlier, but we got to do some things different. So I'm getting to the point where I'm like, maybe I need to take a trip for Thanksgiving one year. Maybe I need to go somewhere else and just sit on the beach. Imagine that, Brother Bailey. Imagine if during Thanksgiving we went ahead and we was on the beach somewhere and we didn't have to worry about cooking the turkey. If all we had to do was sit out and eat some seafood and let the sun and breeze and be out there, man. So sometimes you got to really think about, what do I need to do different? And I say that because sometimes what I need to do different in life, what I need to do different in love, and what I need to do different in my profession.
Timely, accurate, and I think insightful. The reality is you speak to an issue that often we address, and maybe another show for another night, but how do we take care of the caretaker? I was very involved some years ago with Black psychiatrists after, I think it was Hurricane Katrina, which I'm sure you as a New Orleans guy know a lot more about all of the intricate details than I do. But there's a lot of effort after that tragedy occurred, certainly more than I'd seen in other parts of my life, in trying to address help for persons who are involved in providing care for others. How to treat the treater, keeping our own mental health stable, avoiding this treacherous new term, burnout. Everything is burnout now for professionals in mental health and other forms of care. Also, I think just acknowledging that there's a lot to be said for the fact that we're in a very trying and emotionally difficult and complex work environment with some high ceilings. It's hard to ever cure somebody or get them fully well. And with some clinicians, that takes a lot out of the steam out of your, out of your engine, so to speak, because you never really feel like you've done your job and you made the problem go away. An appendicitis may be one of the easiest things. You do the surgery, appendix is gone. You were sick yesterday and you feel great tomorrow. Not the case with us. We have very gradual, very incremental, often very slow changing mores in psychiatry and psychology. So a lot to, I think, do in that setting and what kind of going forward. I also want to make sure I give you maybe the last regular question before we're going to end with final comments. But what difference would somebody engage in with treatments during this time of the year? You talked a bit about treatments. Thought you did a very good job in that regard. Medical treatments and psychological therapeutic treatments can be helpful, and I think they're empirically based. You're right. But are there different considerations you have for young Black males in these settings than others, especially during this time of the year? I want to give you a chance to kind of address that.
So I've taken some time at working with this with some clients. I find sometimes during the holiday season, that's what we might need to take a little bit of a break, right? So I've actually asked some clients during the month of December, hey, let's take a break from therapy unless you have a crisis. I just want you to go about your day-to-day as though, you're good. Let's just see how well you can function during this time where it's a little bit less stressful, in terms of actual like life, right? And I've had some clients realize that they were actually okay with dealing with some things and that maybe they had begun to experience some growth, right? So that's one that I try to ask clients, maybe this is a good time of the year that they can take a little bit of a break, If it's medical, I ask them to make sure that they speak with their prescribing physician and talk to them about any medicines that maybe if they give their body, and I'll let you chime in a little bit more on that, but maybe if they gave their body, their system a little bit of a break, let some of the drug half-life wear off, let them feel a little bit normal and see, how they might function in situations. So that's one. Secondly, which I really enjoy this one, I actually try to get folks to do something different, as I said, right? So this is a time of year, the weather's changed a little bit. So maybe it might be good to do some walking, right? Pick up that exercise habit, right? Get back in the gym, right? Do a little bit of walking. Because I also think that the change of the season is indicative of a need to change some other things. And so it might be kind of nice to say, okay, what can I do differently? And maybe my personal one is I like to do a little bit of cleaning. Sometimes I feel like that cleaning gets therapeutic, but it also gets me to get some things out of my house and out of my life that I no longer need. I tend to find things in my closet I can't fit anymore. I tend to find things in my drawers that I didn't even know I had anymore, that I don't even need. And then I go through other parts of the house and I find that there might be something, a bill or some mail that I can throw away. And I say, kind of to be lighthearted, but the reality is I start to feel that light spirit. And one of the big things that I will end on, this is a time where I actually love to ask my clients, find something to do for somebody else. See, one of my realities of this whole thing is when we start getting so caught up and so focused on our own issues, we might miss out on the fact that we do still have value, that we have a value that we can help others. And then in doing that type of work and how we can assist others, it reminds many folks that they still have value. And I think that's the part, if I was to end on anything, I would say to all my brothers listening, any brother we want to share this with, to remind people that their value exists way more than just their paycheck. It exists in way more ways than just their ability to show up and be in their bravado. Sometimes, as I stated, I still just think about that young lady I helped a couple weeks ago. I don't know what she's doing, but I know that morning I saw a young lady with 2 flat tires and 2 kids in her car. And I say it here because I feel this is an okay space, but I didn't need to do anything. I just changed the tires, helped out, and I went about my way. And that just reminded me that Dr. Brian Turner and all of his PAs and all that stuff, if he can just help change a flat tire, I might help somebody else feel okay.
Well said. I think oftentimes society just needs us to be a brother. And being a brother has, I think, multiple consideration of meanings. It can mean being an alpha brother within alpha. We have rules and regulations and expectations and do's and don'ts, but also a lot of opportunity and a lot of value in the so-called brotherhood. It can mean just being a brother in humanity, as you described, and doing good quality things for people, I think, who actually have that and in need. Wonderful way, really, to end. Perhaps we should end, but I'm a psychiatrist. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the last word because normally we've kind of gone through our questions today. I think with remarkable salience, you really addressed what we really were here to talk about tonight. Issues about being a Black male mental health professional, considerations about, I think, the challenges we have in reaching our community psychologically and emotionally and really mattering and having some representative value that's, I think, not only important but essential. Mentoring, whether we do it directly or indirectly, young people, whether they're in school and training or young brothers who actually are out, but just kind of getting their life started and their career started and need mentorship from up close and from afar, from a distance, watching people try to make do who've already been in it, 10, 20 years, if not 30 years, certainly. I also think that this issue about the holiday season was on the agenda today, and we were really geared to tackle it. What are some of the special kinds of problems somebody might develop? We talk about this diagnosis that's in the DSM, the so-called seasonal affective disorder. How is it different? What does it mean? How might the presentations vary? And what are some of the treatments, psychotherapeutic, that are likely to work? I thought that you addressed those issues in a timely fashion as well. So that being said, and I mentioned about spirituality, in fact, we always have to address that being Black psychiatrists, there may be some cultural community issues that we have to be thoughtful of as we try to make sure we're treating people in the best possible way kind of going forward. That being said, let me just, as we bring it to some close, I'll give you a minute to make a final kind of comment. I know I mentioned Xavier a few times. I don't know if you have any upcoming issues or considerations, seminars or webinars or webcasts or events there at Xavier. I should mention that although there wasn't a mental health program, I got to talk about it a little bit. I went to a program where they were honoring a federal judge there, a group called Carol. I think that there's a lot of these nonprofits that come in New Orleans to acknowledge people who've done a lot in the community, not necessarily just mental health, but just in the community in general. I really appreciated it. Appreciated a lot about what's happening there at Xavier. The president was there, that's right, and some others. So I want to definitely give a shout out, I guess you call it, from my role here at LSU, almost kind of across the street, across the freeway, to really high quality work being done there at Xavier University. As you guys are moving toward even starting a medical school, which will also be very helpful, I think, in our community. That being said, I'll give you a minute for your last closeout comments, and we'll roll from there. But this has been timely and effective, and as always, good brother, Dr. Brian Turner, you always deliver. But I'll give you the last word.
All right, man. Well, look, I want to thank you, Brother Bailey, for having me. Once again, brother, we tend to be able to take these conversations from the backyard to the boardroom, and we don't have to change ourselves or any way demean ourselves or diminish ourselves in who we are. Once again, major love to our leadership, Brother General President Lonzo and Brother General President-elect Metellus, our brother Sterling, our Surgeon General as well. And once again, man, shout out to all of the brothers who take time to take care of themselves. I know that in the busy lives we live, and I know you said earlier about my little princess. She has poked her head into the playroom wall and door a couple of times, and I'm trying to get her to stop because she's ready for dinner and dessert. But I really want to shout out brothers who take time. In many ways, we get caught up on this proverbial rat race or the hamster wheel, and many times we don't remind ourselves that we are not robots. We are not machines. We must take care of ourselves. We must be physically, mentally, and emotionally well. And what that means for me tonight is just to remind brothers that we have what we need in the house. We are at a space and a time where we should be able to call on each other, provide for each other, and love each other, and do what we got to do. And then from there, we can take it outside to the community and take care of our family, our communities, and our friends. With that being said, Brother Bailey, to your point, I really think that we are on the precipice of what we need to be doing on the next level. I think each one of us within ourselves, in our chapters, and within our general organization, we are ready to find time to do the thing for the next generation of brothers coming along in our community. And so with that, brother, I want to remind brothers, make sure that you're taking care of yourself. I'm going to say it over and over again, mainly because in the moment of transparency, recently my doctor told me I got to do some things different. And she pointed to my daughter and said, if you want to be here when she graduates, if you want to be here when she gets married, if you want to be here when she gets her doctorate, you got to make some changes now. So my point, brothers, make the changes now so you can take care of yourself, so you can be here down the road. With that being said, I'm going to shout out to our chapter. We are getting ready for our centennial celebration, 100 years of Sigma Lambda, in the service of Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated. Also, in terms of Xavier, I don't have anything going on, Brother Bailey, because I'm trying to get to November 19th, my birthday. I'm trying to get to Bayou Classic so I can see Southern beat Grambling, and I'm trying to get to my holiday. I just want to sit out and relax, brother. So for what that being said, I ain't thinking about work for too much longer because I've been working hard. As you can see this shoulder on my left. Hold on, Blair. Say hello right quick. Then you got to move. Turn the other way. Come on. Say hello. All right, now roll out. All right, move out. Move now. Move now. I will say this, and this is why I'm done. My daughter is getting to serve as Little Miss Xavier. So tomorrow we have a parade. And with that being said, Brother Bailey, I'm done.
Well, I'm standing every possible way. Good beyond good. Good to see Blair. Wish her well. Strong fatherhood means a lot for our entire community. So we're proud of you for that piece as well. So that being said, I think that we'll wrap this up. I bring it back to your brother Holly to make sure we kind of cross all our T's and dot all of our I's. At times when we have our Surgeon General brother Sterling, he'll pop on with final comments as well. But I certainly will thank you also, Brian. I think just timely, effective. I mean, you speak like someone who I think I said earlier, walks the walk and talks the talk, but just somebody who understands what it means to be a high quality African American male mentor professional. And that's really the highest compliment that we can actually share. Brother Holly?